Hello friends, welcome to Manu Law Classes. मेरा नाम गौतम दीक्षित है. Today in this video we are going to discuss the most important news from the Hindu edition of 21st November 2022. Now since we are nearing the exam, so I will be going to discuss the most important news from Hindu edition which are going to be important for the upcoming exam. So let's start with the news. The first news which is coming is that COP27 forms loss and damage fund, new panel to decide its structure. So हम पहले से जानते हैं कि COP27 जो शर्म अल शेख में चल रहा है. ओके, हमने पास्ट में भी इसके बारे में बात किया था डिटेल में, दैट इज ऑल्सो नोन एज इम्प्लीमेंटिंग COP. और यहाँ पे जो है जो क्लाइमेट फंड है उसको लेके बहुत ज़्यादा बात हुई है. सो नाउ फॉर द फर्स्ट टाइम a loss and damage fund has been established to compensate the most vulnerable countries from climate linked disaster. अभी देखिए यहाँ पे हमने पहले ग्रीन क्लाइमेट फंड के बारे में बात किया था, ठीक है, which whose aim was to mobilize $100 billion fund annually for adaptation and mitigation. Now the new fund has been proposed, that is loss and damage fund. अब देखिए लॉस एंड डैमेज फंड जो है यहाँ पे जो सबसे इम्पोर्टेंट चीज़ है वो ये आपको रिकग्नाइज करना है कि दैट लॉस एंड डैमेज मतलब जो हो चुका है लॉस. So loss and damage funding, it is expected to cover the cost of damage that countries cannot avoid or adapt to. इसका मतलब है कि that loss and damage it refers to impact of climate change that cannot be avoided either by mitigation or adaptation. That is the first thing. Second जो इसके अंदर जो important है that is nothing is कि यहाँ पे propose हुआ है कि ये एक ऐसा fund बनेगा. But who will manage this fund? Whether the contributions will come from large developing countries like European Union ने कहा है कि the fund should also come from large developing countries like China, which are the largest emitter, which may also include India. Okay, so यहाँ पे what will be the share of coming from the large developing countries and what the fair share of contributors will be? It all has been left up to ट्रांजिशनल कमेटी. तो एक ट्रांजिशनल कमेटी बिठाई गई है जो इन क्वेश्चंस के बारे में स्टडी करेगा एंड इट विल मेक रिकमेंडेशन फॉर द एडॉप्टेशन ऑफ फंड एट द नेक्स्ट COP इन UAE, यूनाइटेड अरब अमीरात. फाइन. सो अब हम यहाँ पे अगर फंड के बारे में अगर हम बात करें सो यहाँ पे द फंड विल बी अराउंड $500 बिलियन फंड. तो इस जो अगर आप इसको ग्रीन क्लाइमेट फंड से कंपेयर करेंगे तो ग्रीन क्लाइमेट फंड वॉज ओनली $100 बिलियन. दिस फंड इज अराउंड $500 बिलियन. ठीक है ना, दिस फंड इज अराउंड $500 बिलियन. फाइन. एंड एनुअली $200 बिलियन इसमें ऐड होता रहेगा. ओके, एंड द फंड विल हैव द कॉर्पस ऑफ $500 बिलियन. फाइन. द नेक्स्ट थिंग अबाउट COP27 which is important is mitigation work program. सो COP27 में एक मिटिगेशन वर्क प्रोग्राम स्टार्ट किया गया है. Mitigation work program which will continue till 2030. Okay, mitigation work program, and there will be at least 2 global dialogues held each year till 2030. The next is FIFA World Cup. So FIFA World Cup 2022 FIFA World Cup has started at Qatar. Okay, and there was the opening ceremony at Al Bayt Stadium in Doha. So this is very important. So here we will see the 22nd edition of this mega event. Okay, and as many as 32 teams are participating in the FIFA World Cup. उसके बाद अगर हम देखेंगे that Ecuador it has cruised to a 2-0 win over UAE in the match of the tournament. Okay. Now again friends, coming to COP27, many of the things I have discussed over in the first page. Okay, तो अब हम यहाँ पे कुछ और न्यूज़ ले लेते हैं जो हमारे लिए इम्पोर्टेंट है. That is this loss and damage fund. So it is a nearly 3-decade-old movement. It was first initiated by the island nation of Vanuatu and the Alliance of Small Island States. Okay, and it has come to fruition in COP27. Now there will now be a dedicated fund to compensate the most vulnerable developing countries that are already bearing the brunt of climate change-linked natural disaster. Okay, so here in loss and damage fund it will include not only economic damage to property but also loss of livelihood and destruction of biodiversity and sites that have cultural importance. Okay, now if you will just see over here that Scotland and Wallonia, that is Belgium, they have donated to such a fund. Okay, and the estimate of L&D is nearly $500 billion. उसके बाद negotiation के time European Union it pressed hard for that China, Arab states and large developing countries which might include India to contribute because they are the largest emitters. Now this can also be a ground for acrimony in future uh, conference of parties meeting. The next is on the edge. Russia should create conditions for a constructive dialogue with Ukraine. So जैसा कि हम जानते हैं कि रिसेंटली एक S-300 डिफेंस मिसाइल था विच लैंडेड इन पोलैंड किलिंग 2 पीपल. तो इसमें ये हुआ कि पहले यूक्रेन ने कहा कि ये रशिया ने फायर किया है, बट उसके बाद ये पता लगा कि दिस वाज द मिसाइल विच वाज फायर्ड बाय यूक्रेन टू न्यूट्रलाइज रशियन मिसाइल, बट इट लैंडेड इन पोलैंड किलिंग 2 पीपल ओवर देयर. So we can see that this incident, which is landing of missile in Poland, killing 2 people. Okay, it says that this now Russia-Ukraine conflict can spill over into a border war between Russia and NATO. But both sides they restrained. जैसे कि बाद में जो यूएस के प्रेसिडेंट है जो बाइडन, okay, he responded firmly saying that it was unlikely that the missile came from Russia. उसके बाद व्लोदिमीर ज़ेलेंस्की जो यूक्रेन के प्रेसिडेंट है उन्होंने भी बाद में जो है अपने स्टेटमेंट को चेंज किया. Now the thing is that now this war has entered that anytime this war can escalate, so it is better to start a dialogue with between Russia and Ukraine. Now the next is charting the economic journey ahead. So this is the article which gives us the background and what to be needed in India's economy. So if you will just see over here that India's economic journey, it started with independence, and if you will just see that during the British rule, the first 5 decades, India's annual growth rate was 0.89% and the population grew at 0.83%, and the per capita income it grew at 0.06%. After we became independent, so our economic development strategy it was based on 4 elements. The first was raising the savings and investment rate, dominance of state intervention, import substitution and domestic manufacture of capital goods. उसके बाद क्या हुआ कि by 1970s it was clear that this model needed modification, but it was only in 1991 that a new economic policy was adopted which focused on 3 things. That is dismantling the complex regime of license and permits, that is liberalization and privatization. Then second, redefining the role of state, means बहुत सारे जो sectors थे that were open to private sectors, that is called as privatization. And third, in giving up the inward looking trade policy, that is globalization, following liberal trade policy. Okay, now if you will just see that India's average growth to the end of 1970, so it was 3.6% and the per capita income grew at 1.4%. But on social indicators like literacy rate and life expectancy, there were noticeable improvements. But if you will see that India का जो import था, India heavily relied on heavy imports of food grains, okay, which was changed after the adoption of green revolution. Now if we will just talk about today, so what we need today. So after COVID-19 and Russia-Ukraine war, if you want to grow faster, so we have to focus on certain other things. One of them is investment. So if we will just see here, so that now India needs the to raise its gross fixed capital formation rate from the current level of 28% of GDP to 33% of GDP. Okay, so here it depends upon raising the investment rate. Okay, so यहाँ पे both investment is important, government investment, it is public investment as well as private investment also. The third thing is strengthening the social safety nets. Okay, तो जैसे कि COVID-19 pandemic में हमने देखा था कि strengthening the social safety nets for vulnerable population is also important to achieve the goal of growth with equity. Now the next is about cryptocurrency. So if we will just see that after US and Turkey, India has the third highest number of registered downloads of crypto exchange app. अब रिसेंटली क्या हुआ है कि जो क्रिप्टो एक्सचेंज है FTX, they have filed for insolvency. Okay, they don't have enough money to pay for their investors. Okay, so because of that the values of cryptocurrencies they are plunging down, and since India has the third highest number of registered downloads of crypto exchange apps, so it can significantly impact the Indian investors also. The next is new data protection policy. So we have already done this news earlier, so we will just have a revision of new personal data protection bill 2022. So the Digital Personal Data Protection Bill 2022, it has now been made open for public comment, and government is expected to introduce the bill in parliament in the budget session of 2023. So if we will just go through the data, the background, तो देखिए the first draft जो था about Personal Data Protection Bill 2018, it was proposed by Justice B.N. Sri Krishna Committee, which was set up by the Ministry of Electronics and Information Technology. Okay, now several revisions were made in this draft and it was introduced as Personal Data Protection Bill 2019 in Lok Sabha. On the same day, this bill was referred to the Joint Committee of both Houses of Parliament. Then in August 2022, JPC, the government withdrew this bill. उसके बाद आप देखेंगे कि 2017 में there was a K.S. Puttaswamy versus Union of India judgment related to right to privacy. Okay. And right to informational privacy was also upheld as a fundamental right in this judgment, that is K.S. Puttaswamy versus Union of India. तो जो पहले से हम रूल फॉलो कर रहे थे, that is Information Technology Rules 2011, it was found inadequate, okay, because here privacy was not considered as a fundamental right but as a statutory right. So if you will just see that these rules, they were not applicable to the processing of personal data by the government. Second, that it has limited understanding of the kinds of data to be protected, like personal data, non-personal data, all types of data which can be protected, sensitive personal data, everything. Okay, then obligations to data fiduciaries who are keeping the data, okay, data principals who are generating the data. So now this bill has come. Okay, so if you will just see the DPP bill 2022, it applies to all processing of personal data that is carried out digitally. It means that it includes both personal data collected online and personal data collected offline but is digitized for processing. Okay, so these both type of data are considered as a personal data. After that, there is consent of individual, which is basis for processing of personal data. तो यहाँ पे जैसा कि हम जानते हैं कि there is a new concept also introduced, like consent manager, so which will enable an individual to have a comprehensive view of her interaction with data fiduciaries and consent given to them. The next is that if you will see that this data, it also recognizes right to post-mortem privacy. Now what is right to post-mortem privacy? Right to post-mortem privacy, it is the right that allows the data principal matlab the one who is generating the data, to nominate another individual in case of death or incapacity. The next is certain other highlights of the bill, that is the current draft, it removes explicit reference to certain data protection principles such as collection limitation. So it allows data fiduciary to collect any personal data consented to by the data principal. Okay, so this is one of the thing. So example, if you will see that a photo filter app may process data related to your location or information on your contact, even though it may not require such information to carry on its primary task of applying the filter. Then the next important thing is that this bill has done away with the concept of sensitive personal data. Now if you will just see sensitive personal data, it includes biometric data, health data, genetic data, etc. Okay, so it has done away with this, क्योंकि इस डेटा के लिए हायर प्रोटेक्शन चाहिए होता है, बट द बिल हैज डन अवे विद दिस which requires additional protections. Now coming to FTX, so on November 11, FTX has filed for bankruptcy protection. Now what is FTX? It is world's biggest crypto exchange which has collapsed after reports emerged about its CEO using customer deposits to trade on behalf of FTX sister firm Alameda Research. ठीक है ना, तो यहाँ पे क्या हो रहा है कि जो FTX से जो पैसा आ रहा है वो CEO ने उस पैसे को यूज़ किया है फॉर ट्रेडिंग, ओके, फॉर ट्रेडिंग ऑन बिहाफ ऑफ अल्मेडा रिसर्च. So after that controversy, now they have filed for bankruptcy. If you will just see that FTX, so FTX, it has two verticals, one which can be accessed by global users, okay, which is called as FTX International Platform. The next is FTX US, which can be accessed by persons based in US. So FTX International है, it offered investors an option to trade in tokenized stocks which are digital coin based derivatives of shares of actual companies. Also it allowed users to bet on expected valuations of pre-IPO companies. Now coming to again COP27. So India Health Compensation Fund approved at UN Summit. This is Loss and Damage Fund. यहाँ पे एक चीज़ का डिस्कशन करना बहुत ज़रूरी है. That is Paris Climate Agreement goal. So Paris Climate Agreement goal is of limiting the global warming at 1.5 degrees Celsius. That is limiting the global rise of temperature at 2 degrees Celsius and ideally at 1.5 degree Celsius. अगर आप देखेंगे तो कुछ डेवलप्ड कंट्रीज दे वांटेड टू एक्सटेंड द स्कोप ऑफ मिटिगेशन टू एग्रीकल्चर, टू विच इंडिया हैज प्रोटेस्टेड. इंडिया इज सेइंग दैट डेवलप्ड कंट्रीज दे डू नॉट वांट टू रिड्यूस एमिशन बाय चेंजिंग देयर लाइफस्टाइल्स एंड दे आर सर्चिंग फॉर चीपर सॉल्यूशन. तो अगर आप देखेंगे एग्रीकल्चर का इंपॉर्टेंस हमारे कंट्री में, तो एग्रीकल्चर इट अकाउंट्स फॉर 17% ऑफ इंडियाज जीडीपी एंड इट इज द प्राइमरी सोर्स ऑफ लाइवलीहुड फॉर अबाउट 58% ऑफ इट्स पॉपुलेशन. Now coming to Malaysia, rivals claim majority support in hung parliament. So अगर आप देखेंगे कि एक बार फिर से मलेशिया में पॉलिटिकल इंस्टेबिलिटी हो गया है. ओके, सो अगर आप देखेंगे तो प्राइम मिनिस्टर हैं इस्माइल सबरी याकूब बैरिसन नेशनल अलायंस. ओके, तो इनका एक यूनाइटेड मालाइज नेशनल ऑर्गेनाइजेशन है विच हैज़ बीन इन पावर. Okay, and it has served its worst electoral defeat ever, winning just 30 of the 178 seats. उसके बाद सैटरडे को इलेक्शन हुआ था. ओके, तो यहाँ पर हम देखेंगे कि there was a gain by Islamist party that has called for Sharia law in Malaysia. Okay, now the key winner in this election was Islamist PAS party in the Perikton coalition, securing the largest number of seats of any single party. तो अगर आप देखेंगे that race and religion they are divisive issues in Malaysia, where the mostly Muslim Malays are the majority of the population with sizable ethnic Chinese and Indian minorities. Now, there are two claimants for the government. First is long-time opposition leader Anwar Ibrahim and former Prime Minister Muhyiddin Yassin. Both are saying that they have enough numbers to form the government. The next is Ukraine-Russia trade blame over nuclear plant shelling. So Kyiv and Moscow they have accused each other for shelling on the territory of Zaporizhzhia nuclear plant. So Zaporizhzhia it is also one of the region which has been annexed by Russia after holding a referendum. And Zaporizhzhia nuclear plant it is also one of the largest nuclear plant of Europe. So shelling of nuclear power plant can lead to nuclear accident in Ukraine. Now just one liner that which of the following country has launched air raids against Kurdish militants in Syria and Iraq? So the answer is Turkey. So Turkey ने announce किया है that it had carried out air strikes against the bases of outlawed Kurdish militants across northern Syria and Iraq. Okay, so this Turkey claims that these bases were used to launch terrorist attacks on Turkish soil. तो यहाँ पे जो टर्की है उसने एक पार्टी को ब्लेम किया है. Turkey blamed attack on Kurdistan Workers Party which has waged a bloody insurgency in Turkey. अब इस ऑपरेशन का नाम क्या दिया है टर्की ने? एयर ऑपरेशन क्लॉ स्वॉर्ड. ओके, दैट इज द नेम ऑफ द ऑपरेशन, एयर ऑपरेशन क्लॉ स्वॉर्ड. So friends, that's all for today. We will meet tomorrow again with a daily Hindu analysis. Till then, have a nice time. Take care. Thank you.